Things were really tough, and it was becoming very clear that the Cuban people couldn't sustain life at such a minimal level indefinitely. Still, the government was determined not to sacrifice the social and redistributional gains of the revolution that I mentioned previously. So Castro and his advisors came up with a new strategy that they thought would better living and working conditions. The strategy focused on three priorities: agriculture, the acquisition of scarce hard currency through tourism and biotechnology, and the defense of the revolution. The key was to develop things that would provide a higher rate of return than the traditional sugar, nickel, and citric products, which were all subject to fluctuations in world market prices. Regarding tourism, Cuba's economic decision makers made a conscious decision to re-enter the capitalist world economy and, in fact, allow capitalist investment and enterprise to operate within Cuba itself. They expressed their objective as a desire to live and prosper in a capitalist world while maintaining a socialist system. They counted on the appeal of Cuba's beautiful beaches and on historic attractions like Old Havana to promote the tourist sector that had been so prominent before the revolution. And while there has been substantial debate over the social cost and benefits of developing tourism, there was little choice but to do so. Any worries were right on. Prostitution has increased, and inequality between those working in the dollar economy or the tourist sector and other Cubans has become a reality. Still, the tourist industry could be counted on to generate short-term, freely convertible hard currency, and multiplier effects were important, especially sales of tobacco and rum. Foreign investment was aggressively solicited. In mid-1990, the first joint venture hotel, a Cuban-Spanish partnership, opened in Veradero Beach with profits to be split 50-50. The hotel, built with foreign capital, had construction cost of $30 million. After 1 year of operation, the resort had housed 34,000 guests and garnered an 84% satisfaction rating. The growth of the tourist industry has been accompanied by large investments in construction to enlarge hotel facilities, by professionalization of personnel through in-depth training programs, and by nationwide airport expansion. The investment has paid off. Today, there are 207,200 rooms and well over 2 million tourists, many more than before the revolution. For example, in 1957, 304,711 tourists visited the island. Joint venture capital includes major investors from Spain, Germany, Austria, and Finland, among others. Cuba's military is highly involved in the tourist sector. A state enterprise based in the Cuban military, Gaviota S.A., emerged as a major player, combining private enterprise flexibility with strong state financing and high worker discipline. Gaviota gained much of its expertise while managing recreational centers for Soviet advisors in the 1960s, and reportedly studied China's state-managed economic opening, a process that changed the People's Liberation Army into a major company. Gaviota now operates bus tours, marinas, spas, hunting preserves, fishing excursions, and luxury hotels. It also boasts a large fleet of taxis and airline flights. While much of Cuba's tourist development is centered on beaches throughout the country, especially Veradero Beach, 60 miles east of Havana, there has been substantial construction of tourism facilities within Havana itself, which retains its position as the main tourist attraction within the country. Old Havana is particularly attractive to tourists. Here, in the area designated by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site, another state enterprise associated with the military, Habana-Guex has been involved in converting the historic district into an area resembling the Rouse developments in the United States. The Rouse Company, as you probably know, is known for such developments as South Street Seaport in Manhattan and Harbor Place in Baltimore. Old Havana was the center of the colonial city and held the country's major port. Aside from the lovely, almost imposing residences that had been integrated into the area, the community was also home to the capital's financial and banking sectors. The section of Old Havana where they were centered was known as Little Wall Street and served as an important symbol of North Americanization. Other business and administrative activities remained clustered around the plazas. The Plaza de Armas held the major military institutions. The Plaza de Catedral housed the church. Commercial activities were concentrated around the Plaza Vieja, and the Plaza de San Francisco handled foreign trade. Both Rouse and Habana-Guex are involved in gentrification, although there is a difference between the process in capitalist and socialist environments. In Havana, rather than displacing the many residents of the old core, a large majority of whom live doubled up in substandard housing, the area is being redeveloped with a concern for the integration of social services and living quarters. While commercial activities are in place on the first floor of many buildings, renovated housing is available on the upper levels. Due to a shortage of classrooms, elementary school classes are held in the public space of recently reconstructed museums. Although building facades retain their historic appearance, the family doctor may be housed inside. Joint ventures and foreign real estate investment ensure that resources are available to redevelop historical commercial structures designated for office space, and UNESCO continues to assist with the renovation of convents, cathedrals, and other designated buildings. Despite strenuous U.S. objections, tourism alone is ensuring Cuba a fair amount of success in its efforts to be reintegrated into the regional economy of Latin America and the Caribbean. Jamaica, Mexico, and other Latin American nations are involved in substantial joint ventures related to tourism, including package sharing of tours with other Caribbean nations. Other Cuban trade efforts are also meeting with regional success. Of course, the relaxation of U.S. sanctions would provide a definite boost to the Cuba tourism industry. In that regard, a recent easing of restrictions has led to flights to Cuba from 8 additional U.S. airports. Building on Cuba's advances in healthcare, Cuba's effort to promote its expertise in biotechnology is also expanding, as is the importance of health tourism. But there's no time to talk about this now. Instead, let's turn to the proposed reforms that have been in the headlines recently. Here is Raul Castro's diagnosis of the economic problem. He says, "We have to eliminate forever the notion that Cuba is the only country in the world where one can live without working." He goes on to say, "Without an increase in efficiency and productivity, it is impossible to raise salaries, increase exports, substitute for imports, increase food production, and sustain definitively the enormous social expenditures of our socialist system." Right now, Cuba's economy is stagnant. It isn't collapsing, as some would have you believe, but it is very troubled. And although the Cuban economy has surpassed the disastrous levels of 1990, the real value of wages in Cuba remains at around 40% of the 1989 level. One economist notes, in an amazing reversal of fortune, cuentapropistas, the self-employed, are no longer stigmatized outcasts, but have become the designated saviors of the Cuban economy. The economist goes on to say, Raul displays remarkable faith in microenterprise and the gospel of productivity. The key question is, however, can the micro and cooperative enterprise sector absorb 500,000 to 1.2 million apparently redundant state sector workers and rescue the Cuban economy? The core of the new strategy is first to downsize the state sector by laying off redundant workers, then to reabsorb these displaced workers in the self-employment and cooperative sector. Many think that this is a slap in the face for Fidel. At any rate, the Fidelista model is discredited. Fidel is considered irrelevant. Fidelista ministers have been mostly replaced by Raulistas. Raúl's military friends have moved into management throughout the economy, and Raúl appears to have emerged from his brother's shadow. He seems to want his own economic model, his own reputation, and his own legacy. We will have to wait and see what happens.